Okay, I want to know why all these girls in this series love Rand the Bland. Like, get over it. Hey everyone, it's Stephanie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a book review for The Great Hunt, the second book in the Wheel of Time series written by Robert Jordan. If you want to know more about the overall synopsis or plot of the series, I'll link my Eye of the World book review. I go into a lot more depth in that video. In this one, it's really going to be spoilery. There's really no way to talk about some of this without spoiling what happened in the Eye of the World. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, thanks for coming by. Spoilers starting now. I have some thoughts. I think I'm just going to go character by character and then just kind of go from there. But in this book, we kind of start branching off with different characters. They're not all just one group like they were for a good chunk of the Eye of the World. So, Rand is one of those characters that I know eventually I'm going to grow to love him, but that's not happening right now. It's really frustrating because I know he's kind of got the weight of the world on his shoulders and he has to come to terms with the fact that he is the Dragon Reborn and he has these huge prophecies to fulfill, and it's hard. I know it's hard, and I know that's a lot to deal with, especially I think he's in his early 20s and you're still coming into who you are at that age. So I know it's hard, but I just want to smack his face off. He gets on my nerves, and I just want to shake him and say, accept it, get over it, it is what it is. Just accept it so we can move on and you can start figuring out what you need to do. I'm trying to be understanding with him, but he's very frustrating as a character. The other thing that struck me was the opinions of the Aes Sedai from different characters. I know moving forward in the series that my opinion on the Aes Sedai are going to change, because right now we primarily focus on Moiraine, and I like Moiraine. I know that some people don't like her, but right now I just really love how Robert Jordan has just written these really strong women, and they don't have to have a man to be successful. They just accept what's coming to them and adapt, and I think that's a very realistic view of women. The characters in the book are really hesitant with the Aes Sedai. I know they don't trust them, and they think that they're manipulative, like they can't really lie, but the truths they tell aren't quite truths, if that makes sense. I have yet to really see that. I know it'll come up later, but from what I can tell, Moiraine is just really trying to do what she thinks is best for the world and for the people in her party. Like, I think she's trying, even if her motives aren't all presented up front. I really like her as a character. That may change further on in the series. Selene. It took me a bit to connect who she is in the story, but when I first was introduced to her, I got that vibe like she's not a good person, which turned out to be accurate. The characters' reactions to her were what frustrated me the most. Like, the The boys were just panting over her, like, yes, she's pretty, get over it. And I know part of that was probably part of her charm or her magic, but, oh my god, like, yes, she's pretty, move on. I'm interested to see how she comes into play in later books, because based on what we got from her here, I have a strong feeling she's going to come up later in a big way. Oh my gosh, when the scene where Tom found out that the love of his life was basically slaughtered just broke me. I was tearing up in that scene, and it just was so cruel, and it felt so pointless at the time. You know, I feel like, again, everything that happens in this book, even if the purpose isn't apparent at the time, I feel like it'll come up later and then I can make the connection back. But at this particular point in the book, it just, it was so heartbreaking, and I felt so horrible for him. And I just can't imagine what I would think if I were in that situation. Hurin was an interesting character. I don't remember how to pronounce it, but he is a sniffer, so he can sniff out violence, which I thought was really cool. I've never seen that before. I just think that was a really interesting thing to put in this book, and I really loved seeing how Perrin kind of took on that role after Hurin disappeared with part of their group. Even though Perrin was hiding who he really was, he had kind of the same ability, and so I really enjoyed seeing him take on that role and just start coming into himself more. I think I liked this book more than The Eye of the World because we get to know a lot more about the characters and more of what drives them, and they become more fleshed out as a whole. It's not solely focused on Rand. I really, really loved getting to know Egwene and Nynaeve and seeing their training together with the Aes Sedai. I thought it was interesting that Nynaeve is at a place where she doesn't want to be an Aes Sedai, but she's still drawn to this power, and she's having to come to terms with, in order to really channel and harness and control this power, she needs to become an Aes Sedai. I liked seeing her struggle with that. I thought it was very realistic, especially because she's also dealing with her didn't really get off the ground love with another character, and I just really enjoyed seeing her on this journey, and I'm interested to see how it goes in the next book. I really liked that Nynaeve is a gray character. She's not black and white at all. Like when they got captured by the Shan-Chan and they were in the collars and the leashes, and Nynaeve rescues Egwene and just sees everything that Egwene had to go through and then puts the collar on the person, on that other woman, and just leaves her. That was really shocking to me. But I appreciated it for Nynaeve because I feel like she's becoming stronger and really starting to come into herself as an Aes Sedai. I really, really loved the last 100 pages of this book. This end battle was so well written, in my opinion. It kept me engaged, and I was on the edge of my seat, and I wanted to know what happened. And I really loved how the army kept referring to Rand as Lews Therin. He was the Dragon Reborn, and it really helped push the plot forward and kept the reader interested. That was probably my favorite part of the whole book because I just thought it was well paced. It was well written. It was a good ending to this book. And it just made me want to dive headfirst into the Dragon Reborn. Another one of my favorite scenes was what I'm going to call the flicker scene when Rand attempts to use this portal stone and he makes a mistake. And so he and the people he's with end up living all these alternate timelines, and it's just like flicker, timeline, flicker, timeline, flicker, 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 flicker. You get to see all these different things that could happen and how it affects that particular character, which I loved. I thought that was a great way to help flesh out these characters even more. And I enjoyed that it had a twist where it felt like as a reader you're only experiencing this in, X amount of pages, but in the story this actually took away months of their life. I just thought that was a really cool insertion into this story. My last thought is the Aes Sedai. I am so obsessed with them. I loved getting to see their training and how it can be incredibly terrifying and brutal, and just seeing their way of life, their traditions, their culture was so cool. I think I could read a book just based on the Aes Sedai. And that's one thing I like about Robert Jordan's writing, is that he doesn't just create characters, he creates whole cultures. And it really reminds me of The Lord of the Rings, which I know is purposeful because he was inspired by that. But in The Lord of the Rings, you get the culture of the Shire and the way of life. And you really feel like you get to know the hobbits and why they love the Shire so much. Do not get on this desk. And then in this book, you really get a feel for the culture of the Shan-Chan and the Aes Sedai and everyone from Emond's Field. And I just think it's so well written in that way. My one complaint, or my biggest complaint for this book, is the pacing. Because like The Eye of the World, there were parts that were just action heavy, edge of your seat, couldn't put the book down, and then a lot of slowness and traveling and overly descriptive, and then it climaxes again, and then it's slow. And I just wish it was a little bit more balanced where it was a good pace throughout the whole book. Overall, I gave it 5 stars. I really, really loved it, and I immediately jumped into The Dragon Reborn. So, have you read this book? If so, what do you think? Are any of my thoughts incorrect based on what's in the book? Let me know. I love to talk to anyone about this series. But as always, if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and click the subscribe button down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.